Today we're talking about Lamb's Book of Life, Part 2, or I should call it, the book that Jesus received, Part 2. Because I don't want to assume that the book that He received is the book of life. Remember I told you today, I would be showing you in the Bible why, 4 reasons why the book that Jesus received in Revelation 5 is the book of life. So, before we move on, let's do a brief review. If you weren't here last week, and if this is your first time watching us, welcome from everyone that is watching online. And we appreciate your comments, and please let us know if you have been blessed by this ministry in any way. Shoot us an email or a phone call, and we'll appreciate it. All right, so let's do a quick review. We talked about last Sabbath. We learned how God wrote down a complete history of life before life began and sealed it with 7 seals. And so that at the end of sin's drama, Jesus will open the book and prove to the universe that God does not use His foreknowledge to manipulate His children. And I want to kind of skip through this very quickly because we have a whole material and I could not part this study in 2. So I have to get through it. It's not going to be too long, but it's not too short either. And the Bible says, so that this is why, the book is called the Book of Life. Opposite of most people think, the Book of Life is not an open book that is constantly being updated based on people's decision to either accept or reject the good news. In fact, the Bible indicates the Book of Life has nothing to do with the judgment of mankind. The Book of Life was written and sealed with 7 seals before the foundation of the world, and will remain sealed up until the resurrection of the wicked after the millennium, after the 1,000 years. The Bible proves to, let's show you in the Bible. The Bible says the inhabitants of the world whose names have not been written in the Book of Life from the creation of the world. So when was the Book of Life written? From the creation of the world. It is not a book that is open the moment that I accept. My name is written. The moment I reject, my name is blotted out. That's not what it means at all. Here's another verse, and I'm using the NASB version because different versions render it slightly different, but it changes the meaning, and this is the most accurate translation because it harmonizes with other parts of the Bible. Okay? When one verse seems to contradict, you look at other passages and you understand that, and then you understand the contradiction based upon the other verses in a weight of evidence. The Bible says, all who dwell on the earth will worship Him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. Okay? So, Revelation 13:8. So we also learned that King David knew that God had written a complete history of his life before one of his days came to be, before he was ever born. Notice David's word in Psalms 139, verse 13 through 16. For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that fully well. Welcome, welcome. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. So all the days that were ordained to David, he understood that all of them had been written before one of his days came to be, meaning before he was ever born. Alright, so this is a review, so I'm moving quickly. We also learned, so God wrote a complete history of everyone's life before the foundation of the world, and He sealed it with 7 seals. Then God assigned recording angels to record everyone's life in real time as it happens. Okay? So every action, every deed, according to the Bible, is recorded in the books of records. We see this in Malachi 3:16, Ecclesiastes 12:14, Daniel 7:10. There's a distinction of book and books. when judgment seat took place, the books were opened and the people were judged. As I said, I'm moving quickly because it's just a review. Then, at the end of the millennium, when all the wicked are resurrected and everyone that has ever lived is alive, at the same time, God will open the books of record and compare them with the book of life. Then, everyone present will know that God never uses His foreknowledge to manipulate His children. All the wicked will understand that God is love and that the only reason why they have lost eternal life is because of their poor choices. And we're going to cover this in more details later. There's a lot that I didn't say last week that we'll cover today. And this is when every knee shall bow before Jesus and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, because the Bible says that. And you probably wonder, when would that ever happen? If every knee that ever lived, how could that happen? Well, that's because there will be a momentous moment in time after the millennium, for a short period of time, that every single life, every single soul that ever lived, that ever had life, will be alive simultaneously at the same time. So unfortunately for the wicked, it's 1,000 years too late, since mercy has ended already, because this is after the millennium. Alright, so the wicked dead from all ages remain in their graves during the 1,000 years, Revelation 25. And after the 1,000 years expires, Jerusalem with all the saints will descend from heaven to earth, Revelation 21, 1 and 2. Then the rest of the dead are resurrected to appear before the right throne of God. And notice how this scene, as it appears in the NIV 1984. The Bible says that I saw a great white throne and Him who was seated on it. The earth and the heavens fled from His presence, and there was no place for them. Verse 12, and I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books, plural. So you see how the judgment has everything to do with what is recorded on the books of records, nothing to do with what's recorded in the book of life. Okay? Now, beginning our next study. Now let's get into the new material. So, Lamb's Book of Life, Part 2. Okay, so question. How do we know that the book Jesus received in Revelation 5 is the book of life? And I believe in order to properly answer this question, a fourfold answer is necessary. So let's go into answer number one, and you guys can stop me anytime and ask any questions. This is an interactive Bible study. Don't worry about the camera, and stop me anytime. Yeah, it's not a problem at all. Amen? Alright, so reason number one. John mentions the book of life 7 times in Revelation. It's mentioned more than 7 in the Bible, but in the book of Revelation 7 times. And he distinguishes the book of life from the other books that are in heaven, as you just saw. Daniel also makes a distinction between books, plural, Daniel 7, 9, and 10, and the book of life, singular, Daniel 12, 1. So there's a distinction there by the 2 apocalyptic writers. Interesting. Also notice something very interesting. So after Jesus, or the Lamb as he is introduced in Revelation 4, 5, and 6, after Jesus was found worthy to receive the book, having 7 seals, in Revelation 5, 3 through 9, John refers to the book with a possessive noun. So we have a teacher here. What's a possessive noun?
Shows ownership.
I'm sorry, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, claiming ownership. So let me briefly explain to you guys. I'm not going to read the whole passage because I was trying to do this effectively, but not take forever to do it. I'm trying to get you guys out of here sooner. So in Revelation 4, 5, and 6, there's this dramatic cosmic scene going on. The whole universe is invited. There's thousands upon 10,000 times 10,000 attending this scene. And in this scene, a mighty angel proclaims with a loud voice the question into space. Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scrolls of this book? And then, nobody's found worthy that can receive the seal. So John, the Revelator, he sees and he begins crying. He's weeping because no one was found worthy to open the scroll and look inside. Nobody. So one of the 24 elders points to Jesus, or the Lamb, and he proclaims, the Lamb, he is worthy to receive the book because he has overcome by his own blood. So Jesus approaches the Ancient of Days. This scene is in Daniel 7 and Revelation 4, 5, and 6. It's exactly the same scene. So Jesus approaches the Ancient of Days and takes possession of the book. Notice, Revelation 5 and 7, 5 verse 7. Jesus went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who sat on the throne. Therefore we conclude, the Lamb was found worthy to receive the book, and he did receive it, and he took possession of it. And when did that happen for those that were here for that Bible study? 1798. We covered this several times. If you have not seen that, I would encourage you to go to our website and watch that study. It's in a beautiful, beautiful study of what the work that Jesus is doing in heaven today to take care of the sin problem. Now question. Since Jesus received the book, to whom does the book now belong to? If Jesus took the hold of the book.
Jesus.
Absolutely. This is why John refers to the book of life with a possessive noun. Notice, speaking of those that are going to inhabit the new city, the New Jerusalem, the Bible says, nothing impure will ever enter in, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Isn't that beautiful? After he takes possession of the book, now John refers to the book with a possessive noun. It's Alex's car, or Sister Cheryl's car, or whatever. That's a possessive noun. Jesus the book of life belongs to Jesus. Okay? So, can you guys explain to me? You guys are following me, right? Alright. So now, like I said, I want to make it interactive. Now, reason number 2, why does the book that Jesus received in Revelation 5 is the book of life? Why I believe it is the book of life. Let's go for reason number 2. The book of life, unlike any other books of record that you read in the Bible, in heaven, remains sealed until the end of the 1,000 years. All other books are open prior to the second coming. Like, for example, investigative judgment, we read there that the books of records are open. However, the book of life remains sealed until after the 1,000 years. This is a critical point. The book of life is not open or used during the judgment of mankind. Opposite of what we think, right? Human beings will be judged according to their actions and choices, which are recorded in the books of deeds. The Bible says, Ecclesiastes 12:14, 2 Corinthians 5:10, Daniel 7:9 and 10, Malachi 3:16, Revelation 20:12. So, let's say, for example, that Abel, the son of Adam and Eve, let's say his life's record was recorded in the books of deed, or in the book of record. Abel is the one that got killed by his brother. And everything got recorded there in real time as Abel did whatever he did, his actions, his works in his life. And the books of records were open in the investigative judgment. Okay, and let's suppose that Abel's name was the first one to come up on the judgment day, investigative judgment, because he was the first one to die. So suppose that his name will be the first one to to come up in the investigative judgment. Okay, so he, whenever the investigative judgment begins, he is the first person. Welcome. He will be the first person who will be judged in the investigative judgment. Does that make sense? And that's where the books of records will be opened. Welcome. On the other hand, like I said before, the book of life is not open at all until after the millennium. Or in other words, after judgment. Because the Bible says that Jesus says, "Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give to everyone according to his work shall be." So an investigative judgment is necessary, because when Jesus comes, he already brings the reward. See that? People that believe in a secret rapture, that they're taken before the second coming, they don't even consider this, but they would also have to believe in investigative judgment, which they don't. They have not considered that. But it's interesting. So, any questions so far? Any points that I need to clarify?
So just from these 2 points, you're saying there's no way Jesus could be using the book that was written before we were even here
Correct.
to judge us.
That's right.
So we couldn't.
Yes, he could not use the book of life to judge anybody.
So he couldn't coerce us with it. He couldn't change our free will.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and we know that he did not use the book of life to judge at all, because the judgment, we see that the book of life is only opened once in the Bible, and that's after the millennium.
Right.
And the only books that are open, plural, are the records, the book of deed. And we see that in the investigative judgment scene in Daniel 7, 9 and 10. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, any question there on that side? Now, on reason number 3, we know that the book with 7 seals is the book of life because of its contents. Even though no one knows the details found within the book sealed with 7 seals, Revelation 5:3, we do know about the contents, because the Bible says so. The Bible says, if anyone's name was not found within the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. So we know that there are names written in there, and if the names are not written, if the name is not written in there, but is blotted out, then that person will be thrown in the lake of fire. In other words, he's not going to make it. So we know the content, but we don't know what's inside exactly. This speaks volume, if you think about it. Many Christians read this verse and think the book of life contains only the names of the saved, but they interpret the title to mean the book of eternal life. In other words, if your name is there, you're going to be saved eternally, because you accepted Jesus, your name is there. The moment you reject Jesus, he blots out your name and you're doomed. But the Bible does not support this position, even though the names of the people who will receive eternal life will be found written in the book. Please allow me to explain. The book of life includes the life's records of everyone who was given life from God. Every single person. God did this because from the beginning, he foreknew who could receive the gift of life. Our choices and actions were pre-recorded in God's book before we had the privilege of living it, as we read in Psalms 139:16. Because God has perfect foreknowledge. So naturally, the question is asked, why would God pre-record everyone's life only to have the names of the wicked blotted out before they were created? Right? Why would he put everybody's life there, and then he would blot out the name of the wicked before they were even created? Well, answer, on the basis of perfect foreknowledge. God wrote out a complete history of life before life was created, and then he blotted out the names of the people who would choose rebellion. But he did not blot out their record of life. He simply blotted out their names. Let me explain. Perhaps a little background of blotting out names in the Bible will help. So in ancient times, the tribes of Israel kept very good records of their ancestry. We find two very good examples of this in the Bible. This is that part, when it comes to it, you'll be like, oh, I'm falling asleep. I hate this part. Actually, it's the best, because you can see all the details in there. In Matthew 1st, the lineage of Jesus is traced all the way back to Abraham, and in Luke 3, all the way back to Adam. So very, very good records were kept. So it was a custom in those days to write the names of the offsprings in the official records of the nation, because tribal lineage was very important. We read in Numbers 26, 53 and 54 that the land of Canaan, for example, was divided according to the size and lineage of each tribe. And temple responsibilities and duties among the priests were determined by lineage in Exodus 40, Numbers 4. In Deuteronomy 23:2, God says, "No one born of a forbidden marriage, nor any of his descendants may enter the assembly of the Lord, even down to the 10th generation." Whenever an Israelite violated the law of God defiantly, that's like when you really want to do it, you just don't care. Depending on the offense, God commanded that person to be cut off from the people, from his people. Or meaning, cut off means in the Bible means put to death. It's kind of brutal nowadays, but God is the one that invented the capital punishment. So, this was what we call theocracy, when God was not only their God, but their president. Okay? Now, if a person was cut off from his nation, his name was blotted out of the tribal rolls. They could not erase the person's name because written evidence of that life had to be preserved in order to account for their offspring. For example, here's my wife and I, Mardekiel and Anna. We have 4 kids, Meila, Eloise, Havla, Giovanni, and Havla. Let's say they get married to other people and they have more kids, they get married and they have other kids. All of a sudden you have thousands of people, right? From a couple. And let's say that this guy right here, he sinned defiantly, and then he's cut off from the tribe, and he's dead. Now, his name could not be erased. I mean, could not be completely eradicated from there. But he would only be blotted out, because how would Anna account for all the life, for all the family tree, for the offspring? It takes 2 to have kids and make a family. So this is why names were blotted out and not completely erased. Because you end up with a big mess without knowing anything. Who came from who and all that stuff. And they kept records of that. So God uses the same examples that you find in the Bible in the process of writing out the book. Now, this imagery helps us explain 2 important points. First, God wrote out a complete history of life, and He included the names of everyone that would ever live in the record. Then He blotted out only the names of those who would refuse to submit to the Holy Spirit. Second, we learned that if this information was leaked prematurely, God would have a very difficult time proving that He did not predestine some people to eternal death and some to eternal life before they were ever created. I mean, this is why the book had to be sealed 7 times. So it would never leak prematurely. Can you imagine if the devil gets a hold of the book prematurely and opens it and says, look, God is a mean God. He wrote everybody's, He picked some people to be fuel for hellfire and some to be saved. It's not fair. Then how would God ever prove that? So He had to lock it securely with 7 seals. Okay? Now, my life and your life are recorded in the book of life. Is that scary? Because God has perfect knowledge, He foreknew who would choose eternal life and who would choose rebellion. But no one will have access to this information until sin's drama has been completed. Please let me clarify something here real quick. By writing out the life history of each person before they had a chance to live, God does not determine their choices. God writes out our choices because He has perfect foreknowledge. In other words, it does not happen because He wrote it because it will happen. You understand the difference? God does not write because He's making it happen. He simply sees the future as we see the past, or even better. So He knows the future well enough to write without having any influence at all. Any questions at all?
It's kind of hard to wrap my head around that because, He speaks things into existence.
Yes.
So by Him producing this record, it's as if He has produced its existence,
Yeah.
That He writes it in retrospect.
Correct.
It's almost conflicting with how we look at His character in Genesis, or His ability in Genesis. You know what I'm saying?
Right. In other words, it's going back with some old-fashioned manners instead of just speaking things into existence.
Well, I'm saying if in Genesis He's speaking things into existence,
Yes.
But here He's writing something down, but it's not Him creating it. He's only writing it down as a historical thing of what.
Correct.
Which is hard to wrap around,
Yes,
because
it is.
if He says it, it happens.
Right. That's true.
I understand.
Yeah, and he writes it. He writes based on His perfect foreknowledge, not because He wants it to happen that way, but because He knows it's going to happen naturally. Does that make sense?
It does. It's still hard to wrap.
Yeah.
We get to be God.
In other words, you understand, but it's hard to wrap our minds around it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sister.
It's almost close to predestination.
Yep.
Makes you feel.
It's the opposite of predestination. It's exactly the
He
opposite.
doesn't tell him what's going to happen, so he predestined you to do that.
No. He writes it down because let me ask you something. Does God knows the future as well as the past? So based upon His perfect foreknowledge, He wrote a record, kind of like the story I told you last week, because He had to protect His own character from accusations, because He knew exactly like who would rebel, who would not. So in order to prove that He didn't have anything to do with their rebellion, He wrote out exactly what they would choose, and He sealed it. So at the end, He opens up what He wrote, and whatever the angels recorded in real time as that person did, and they compare the records and they see that what God wrote based on His foreknowledge, it's identical to what the people chose to do. Therefore proving to the vast universe that He never used His foreknowledge to manipulate His children. Does that make sense? So it's actually the opposite. I think the story that I told yesterday, last week, makes it very simple to understand. Do you have questions, sister?
No, I just wanted to say my understanding was
Yes.
that God doesn't write that because He needs it for Himself.
There you go.
He doesn't write it for Himself.
No, he
He
doesn't.
writes it for the judgment. For
That's right.
others, the angels,
Yes.
the
That's a-
lost. It's
Yes.
for everybody else.
That's a beautiful
He
point
doesn't
right
need
here.
it.
No, He doesn't need
He
it.
doesn't need to keep a
No.
record and
No.
write stuff down. It's for others.
Yes,
Because He's a just God. He's a righteous judge.
that's right.
Our earthly judge always have to have a record. They always have to go back
Yes.
to that. They have to look up stuff.
Yes,
God is righteous, so
That's right.
He's above that.
That's right.
He's above being right.
amen. In
He's
other
never
words,
going to be wrong.
amen. In other words, God doesn't owe us any explanation. We should just believe it and shut up. But that's not how He is. He says, no, I want to show you. I don't have to, but I want to show you. So therefore, I'm writing it out before it happens, because I know what's going to happen. And then I'm assigning angels. Look how clever. To write what Carol does, Mr. Cheryl does, what Martica does in real time as we do it. And they're recording everything. Then keep that record and keep my records sealed up. So after judgment has taken place based upon the books of records, not upon the book of life. Because that would be unfair. Because wait a second, I wrote it, I can decide whatever. No, the books of records that essentially we are the ones that write the book of records. The angel's just recording. We are writing it, right? I can decide what I put in there and what not. The angel just records what I do, my actions. So we're going to be judged according to the books of record. And then, like Sister says, then he opens it up to just prove that he did not tamper with information, that we were judged because of what we did, not because of what he wrote. Does that make more sense?
Also, the Bible talks about the angels being sent to reap the harvest. So they have to have a knowledge of, they don't have the knowledge of God himself. They have to have a record or a knowledge. God says, go reap the harvest. Go bring the righteous, go, in the first resurrection.
Yes.
So they my understanding is they read that record. They've been following that person. They've been recording.
That's right.
They have to be satisfied with what God did all as well.
Amen.
Even though he proved to them 1/3 of the angels were cast out, they were all together.
Yes.
And God, step by step, has been revealing.
That's right.
So they have to have that knowledge as well. It's not that it's going to be something arbitrary that nobody can point to.
God is just going to say, just go get the ones you think is the best ones.
he knows that we cannot soak all that in.
Yes.
Everything is done in measure. Everything is done perfectly, precisely, so you can connect.
Yes. Are you guys following the very important point you made? The angels are giving charge. In other words, this proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the angels attended the investigative judgment. In fact, God does not need an investigative judgment that takes 150 years. Are you kidding? He can judge everyone in a second. He doesn't need, but he's doing it at the speed of human beings because he brought up 24 elders, 2 of each tribe. This is what I believe, up in heaven to be, because the Bible says on the witness of 2 or 3, let every witness be established. So God is doing this in the speed of human beings. Remember the 24 elders are around it? This is why it's taking so long.
He's waiting for us.
That's right. Well, he's analyzing all the records, and it takes time. So the angels that are there, they're going to know who are the ones that made it and not. So by the time they get here in the second coming, the angels know who to call out of the grave, who Jesus will call out. Amen? All right. Now, we can go to reason number 4. Okay, why the book of life? Why the book that Jesus received in Revelation chapter 5 is the book of life? 4th reason, and most fascinating reason that proves beyond any reasonable doubt that the book that Jesus received in Revelation 5 is indeed the book of life. But before we do that, we must first talk about apocalyptic rules of interpretation. Because I've been telling you guys the reason why our study, if you talk to any church out there in the world, everybody has an interpretation, everybody have their own beliefs in that particular revelation or whatever story. Everybody claims to know. Do you guys want to open the doors? To make a little more breathing time? Yeah, you can do that because it's very cold out, nice and cool outside. And we had a little problem with our ventilation system today. So you can, if you can open that, and then that door can be, there you go, maybe you can get some wind there. That one. I'm okay here, but I just want you guys to be comfortable. All right. So, as I was saying, everybody claims to have the truth. The Mormon little girls that came to my house, well, they have the truth, and they're sure that they have the truth. And they're there to save me. And you go to the Baptist, they have the truth. You go to the Catholic, they have the truth. Any church, any theologian that you ask, they have the truth. And if you go to Pentecostal theology school, you're going to learn exactly what the Pentecostals teach. If you go to a Baptist seminary, that's exactly what you're going to learn. Any school that you go, you will learn according to what their church teach. Not a drop more, not a drop less. So everybody claims to be the authority. So what makes it, these studies that we're studying, different than everybody else? What makes it different? The difference is that these studies, just like math, these studies are not my interpretation, they're a result of valid rules, just like mathematics. If you do 4 plus 4 equals 8, right? Can you dispute that? Not if you know anything to do with math, because it's ridiculous for me to say, because the result is determined by mathematics. I cannot dispute it. Therefore, 4 plus 4 is 8. It's not my understanding, it's not yours, it's a fact. So, the same thing, the Lord wrote, He locked the prophecies of Revelation in Daniel 12, 4 and 9, and He actually sealed it until the time of the end. And I want you to understand that valid rules, there are 4 valid rules that we follow that are very much common sense. You're going to hear about 3 of them today, 2 very simple. 3 of them are super simple and common sense. 1 is a little more complicated, but it makes a lot of sense. But you have a taste of them today. But the point is this: if I am using valid rules, then it's not my understanding. God is a God of order. He would not just have the book of Revelation and Daniel written and have 10,000 people have 20,000 different interpretations. He would have the more sure word of prophecy that we would do well to adhere to it, the Bible says, right? And right now everybody has their own agenda, so to speak. Well, one of the things that you want to understand also is that rules are not invented. Rules are discovered. Does that make sense? This right here was the law of gravity way before it ever became the law of gravity. It was just discovered. So the same way God hid these 4 rules when He locked the book of Daniel until the time of the end. So here's prophecy, apocalyptic rule number 1. Each prophecy has a beginning and an ending point in time. The events in each prophecy happens in the order given. Whenever the chronology of a prophecy is interrupted, a new prophecy begins. For now, I want to focus on the first part of the rule right here. Each prophecy happens in the order given. Okay? Let me give you an example. I know that you guys have heard this 1,000 times. You can almost teach it. But you've never heard it, sister. So, notice, for example, in the book of Revelation, God gave 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 plagues, right? All these numeric prophecies were given in perfect chronological order. For example, when we read the Bible, first God gave seal number 1, then seal number 2, then God gave seal number 3, 4, 5, and 6, and lastly God gave seal number 7. That's the way God wrote it. That's the way He inspired the Bible writer to write it. So rule number 1 says that we must allow the chronology to be to occur exactly how God gave it, not according to what my church says. Is that reasonable? Because I'm getting ahead of myself. Because, for example, in the order given, for example, the 5th seal cannot occur until the 4th seal is broken. Because the 4th seal was given first. So we need to allow God to determine. If God gave seal first, 4th first, then that needs to break before the 5th seal can be broken. In other words, we cannot say, oh, the 5th broke before the 4th. Well, that's not how God gave. Now watch this. The 3rd seal cannot happen until the 3rd trumpet cannot happen until the 2nd trumpet occurs. Now here comes the profound statement. Because if God has not declared the order of events in a prophecy, then who on earth would have the power to determine? If I don't allow the Bible, and if I don't allow the way that God gave, then who on the earth would have the power to determine? Do you guys want to take a minute, take a break, stretch a little bit? I know that I said I wasn't going to tell you that, but it's a little bit hot, so I apologize. They're called the AC men. It should be on his way. All right. So, is this making any sense?
Yeah.
If I decide, oh, my church says this one here happened first, then who are you to say I'm wrong? You're going to say, oh no, my church says this one here happened first. We're self-canceling. We're making ourselves fools. Because opinions are as good as nothing. Right? But we have to allow the Bible to understand. So this is the point. For almost 2,000 years, people have studied the 7 seals of Revelation. But because these simple rules were not known, the 7 seals simply could not be understood until the last days, until the time that we're living now. Please notice the 7 seals as they appear in the Bible. The 7th seal, as we read in the Bible, NIV 1984 version. This is what it says. Revelation 8, 1-3. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Another angel who had a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense to offer with the prayer of all God's people on the golden altar in front of the throne. Do you see how these verses, number 1 and 2 and 3, seem completely disconnected? Completely, it has nothing to do with it. You have no idea what this means. The Bible does not tell us anything what the 7th seal is. Because in the moment it starts, it interrupts and something else begins already. The 7th seal has nothing to do with 7 angels, with 7 trumpets, and another angel doing a mediation work here. It's all disconnected. So this leaves the reader without any idea whatsoever what the 7th seal is, except for speculation. And that's exactly what every single church out there have done. They speculate, and everybody have their own speculations. Some are worse than others. So this is why. So in order for the 7th seal to make any sense, rule number 1 must be understood. But these rules were not discovered 150 years ago. So therefore, we had no idea what these things meant. For example, some people try to say that there is silence in heaven for half an hour because heaven will be empty at the second coming when Jesus, with all his holy angels, will vacate heaven to come to gather the saints. Advocates of this view use a day for a year, and the half an hour becomes something like 7 days. Well, there are several reasons this view is not possible. And here's one. Please notice this chart. So this is the progression of time. In other words, we are here today, and this is towards the second coming. Okay? So this is today, and these are the seals right here, as they appear in the Bible. So the 4th seal is what we're waiting next, which is the time of trouble, where the authority of Jesus will be revealed. Seal number 5, the 5th seal, is the martyrdom. That's when the faith of Jesus will be revealed in the lives of the martyrs. Then, seal number 6 is the second coming. The glory of Jesus will be revealed to the whole world when he comes in glory. Then, after that, what happens? I'm not going to have time to read the 6th seal, but the 6th seal is the second coming. Now, for me to say that the silence in heaven over here, because remember the silence is related to the 7th seal, right? What happens after the second coming? What is going to happen on this earth? 1,000 years, right? There's nothing going on for 1,000 years. So for me to actually say that the half an hour caused by the 7th seal, that's because all the saints left heaven to come to open the 6th seal. Do you see what the problem is? We're actually saying that the 7th seal broke first, So they vacate heaven, they come for the second coming to break the sixth seal. That's a perfect example of a private interpretation. In other words, one that is not intended. One that is the only I know it and nobody else would find out. Unlike math. Does that make any sense? Because if we don't allow God to determine the events, then who knows it to be the right way? All right. Okay, so then we're moving good here. Okay, now here's a fact. We're going to use what I just talked about here, and we're going to expand that into something even bigger. Okay? Fact. The book of life is only open once in the whole Bible. Right? That's in Revelation 20, verse 11 and 12. We also know that the book that Jesus received in Revelation 5 is a book sealed with 7 seals. Or we can also call 7 locks. Right? We know that that's what the Bible says. That he receives a book, it's sealed with 7 seals or 7 locks. So follow me. And now, of course, everybody knows that only valuable items are stored in a safe box. Is that so? I mean, do you buy like a safe box, Alex, to put your underwears and socks? Not at all, right? Very unlikely. So anything of valuable we put in a safe box. Even I have one. Mine is just full of mess. So we don't buy a safe box to keep our old stuff that we don't care, but to keep what is valuable. Amen? And now, if this is true, that you put your stuff in a safe box with 1 lock, what does 7 locks imply to you?
They have to be opened in order. If you skip one, it's still not
Right.
open.
Yeah, because you have 7 locks. So if you open one, it's not going to open. You got 6 more. But it implies that the contents inside the safe is socks and underwear?
No, very valuable.
Very valuable. Very valuable. Because 1 lock is not even enough to secure. You need 7. So for illustration's sake, we made the point already. But the point that you're making, sister, that I appreciate is that if I open 1 lock, do I have access to the contents within? No. If I open 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, do I have access to the content? No. I need to open all 7, right? I have to open all 7. Now notice, once again, because apocalyptic prophecy happens in perfect chronological order, the 6th seal has to occur before the 7th. This has to happen before the 7th. Because that's how God gave. I cannot say, no, God, I know more than you. I'm going to do the 7th first. We cannot. And so we need to allow the 6th one to grow first. And because there's a millennium at the second coming, there's nothing going on, then the 7th seal has to be after the millennium. Does that make sense? Okay, so naturally the 7th seal is pushed or forced to occur after the millennium. Now with this in mind, please listen very carefully. Let us assume one more time that we do not know what the book Jesus received is. We have no idea what the book that he received is. But because we do know that the 7 seals are essentially 7 locks protecting, guarding, or preventing the contents of the book, this book, from being exposed. We know that, right? Once then the 7th seal is open, which is the last of the 7 locks, what shall we expect to be revealed at that moment?
The book of life.
The contents within the book. whatever that book is, right? But he had to open the seventh. Does that make any sense? You got 7 seals, 7. When you open all the seventh one, then you now have access to the contents of the book. And this is why God is so wise that He waited. And whenever the book of life is opened at the end, after the millennium, which means the 7th seal is related to the book of life. Okay, now I'm going to explain this a little bit more.
When do I get to see my record of deeds?
Your record of deeds?
Yeah.
You're not going to see it. Well, I mean, after the millennium. Yeah, after the millennium, we'll get there. Yeah, after the resurrection of the wicked. I mean, the angels are probably, they have already seen it once, but then that's going to be exposed again.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But you get to see that before the book of life is open.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be compared together.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's going to happen right after the millennium. Now, what's the only book that is open in the book of Revelation? Open once?
The book of life.
The book of life. And where is the scene found in the Bible where the book of life is open? Revelation 20, verse 12, right? So, do you understand what I'm trying to say here? You look a little confusing.
Yeah, the dot's not gonna. So, initially you were telling us the reasons why you believe the book in Revelations 5 is the book of life.
Mm-hmm.
We stopped at 4, and at
Yes.
4 we deviated to figure
No, this
out.
is 4.
We're still on 4.
Yeah.
But what's the reason why we're going down the rules?
Because if you don't have the rules, you
Uh-huh.
could never associate the book, the 7th seal, which is what happens in Revelation 8, with the book of life, which opens in Revelation 20. I'm trying to make the connection. Okay? Now I'm going to show you this beyond here. In order for us to understand a little more clearly, the second part of the prophecy has to be understood now. I'm showing you how to use the rules.
Okay.
How they're used. Okay, so the second part of rule number 1 says this, and you will see this clearly now. Whenever the chronology of a prophecy is interrupted, a new prophecy begins. Okay? So please note, although each prophecy is given in perfect chronological order, the book of Revelation isn't. This confuses a lot of people. Did you get this right here?
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, each prophecy has its own chronology within itself. But the book of Revelation is not written in perfect chronology. Let me give you an illustration here. Let's read the 6th seal now. Okay, which is the second coming. The Bible says in Revelation 6:12-14, as I watched as He, Jesus, opened the 6th seal, there was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat's hair. The whole moon turned blood red, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth as figs drop from a fig tree when shaken by a strong wind. The heavens receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and islands were removed from its place. Now continues. Then the kings of the earth, the princes and generals, the rich and the mighty, and everyone else, both slave and free, hid in their caves among the rocks of the mountains. They called to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of Him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can withstand it? What is this talking about? Second coming. 6th seal is the second coming. Now question. I asked you this before. In what state will the earth be left at the second coming?
Desolate.
Desolate. For 1,000 years, right? See, the passage that we just read is the end of chapter 6. Revelation chapter 6 ends with this, right there. Now, notice how Revelation chapter 7, which in most people's mind is the continuation of chapter 6. Notice how it begins. Are you following what I'm saying? I want to make sure. Yeah, most people think that Revelation 7 happens after Revelation 6. Now notice, it ends with the second coming, and Revelation 7 begins after this, see, after this, it means like, oh, this looks like it's right after. After this, I saw 4 angels standing in the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth to prevent any winds from blowing on the land, on the sea, on any tree. Then I saw another angel coming from the east, having the seal of God, of the living God. He called out with a loud voice for the 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea. And he said, do not harm the land and the sea and the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from the tribes of Israel. I mean, does this sound like earth after the second coming? No. Not at all. This happens prior to the second coming. Okay? So, this is why you need the second part of the rule. Whenever a prophecy is interrupted, a new one begins. So, chapter 6 ends. The prophecy is interrupted there with the second coming. This is a new prophecy beginning. It has nothing to do with chapter 6. But if you don't know that, if you don't know the rules, you'll be like, man, this is confusing. I know people who wrote books on Daniel and Revelation. When they saw this, they're like, oh my goodness. They were like shocked. Okay, now, because God sealed prophecy until the time of the end, didn't He or did He not? In Daniel 12:4 and 9. God sealed it until the time of the end, so no one could understand. Because He did that, God had to find a way to keep the book of Revelation from being understood until the final generation. He did that for almost 2,000 years. So, what did God do? He wrote the complete story of the end in the book of Revelation. Then He intelligently copied parts of the story and pasted them all over the place. Okay? Only at the proper time, by using proper rules, Bible students could assemble all the pieces and unlock the book of Revelation. Do you understand what I just said? So He took parts, He wrote a perfect story, and then He chopped a piece here, He put it there, and confused everything, so that only with valid rules that we could assemble the pieces together. And I'm going to show you now, and you understand why the Bible validates the rules. And only because of the rules we're able to understand the 7th seal. Okay, now with this in mind, please consider this. Revelation 8:1 and 3. When He, the Lamb, Jesus, when He opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And then He goes on to say something else. And then I saw 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Another angel who had a golden censer. So it's completely disconnected. These verses right here are completely disconnected. Now, it makes no sense at all as it reads. If you try to understand what the 7th seal means, you can never get it. You will never understand it in another 1,000 years, or 2,000 years for that matter. Now, using rule number 1, which says the events in each prophecy happens in the order given, we know that the 7th seal has to happen after the 6th seal. The 6th seal is the second coming. Now, where in the Bible should we apply the 7th seal? After the millennium. Because there's nothing going on here. Does that make sense? Using the rules. There's no other way to understand this except for the rules that we're following the Bible. Now, please notice how, let's say for example, let's copy Revelation 8:1, which is the last of the 7th seal, which is the 7th seal, is the last of the 6. And let's paste it after the 6th seal, which is the second coming. In other words, prior. We have to interpret the 7th seal after the 6th seal, which is the second coming, because there's nothing going on there during the millennium. Okay, I think this is very clear. Now think about it. If the 6th seal is the second coming, as you read it, then the 7th seal has to occur after the millennium, which is exactly where the book of life is opened. Please notice how it reads now that I copied and pasted, okay? So the blue here is what I copied from Revelation 8:1. Then I saw a great white throne, and him who was seated on it, The earth and the heavens fled from his presence, and there was no place for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were open. Another book was open, which is the book of life. When he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour, and the dead were judged according to what they had done as recorded in the books. Please tell me what I just did and why I did it.
You did a chronological order
That's right.
of what was not going on.
That's right. But now, did I do that on my own initiative? Did I do that on my own power? Do I have any power to mess with the Bible, to tamper with the Holy Scriptures and take it and put it anywhere I want? Do I have that power? Am I doing that sin? No. But I have to understand the Bible because, let me go back here real quick, because I have to understand the Bible since the sixth seal, the seventh seal, cannot occur until the sixth one breaks. Cannot. Because that's how God gave. And there's nothing, no place for me to put the seal because earth is just left desolate. So then I have to understand it after the millennium. And then I go to the only place after the millennium that there are books being opened. And then I find there, when the seventh seal breaks, I find the book of life being opened. Now, what book is the book that Jesus received? I mean, this is amazing. Now, how on earth can anyone find this out unless you have the valid rule? Do you see? Are you understanding how the very nature of the Bible validates the rule? Because without it, I could never put those two things together. Are you, Alex, have you?
So the thing that I've been waiting for the answer is number 4, and the reason to justify why the book in 5 is the book of life is because you have to apply the first rule, the second half of the first rule.
The reason number 4 is that the number 7 has to occur after the 6,
which is only derived from the rule.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no other place for us to put that seventh seal except for after the millennium. And then after the millennium, it's exactly where the books are being opened, and that's exactly where the book of life is open. And remember, the seventh seal breaks. How many seals sealing the book? 7. So 6 open, the contents cannot be exposed. When the 7th is broken, then the contents are exposed. And that's the only place we see the book of life's content being exposed, after the 7th one breaks. It's pretty amazing. I hope you may have to watch this a couple of times to understand. Now we're wrapping it up. Yes.
Do you know where the interpretation came from that the silence in heaven for half an hour was?
Oh yes, I sure do. Yes, what happened was that, and we're going to talk about that. I'm so glad you brought it up. What happened, that's why I'm going to end with that right now, but I'll tell you briefly. That's because some people have made a rule, a wrong rule that is not a valid rule. If I let this thing drop one time and it doesn't drop and it just floats, can I call that the law of gravity?
No.
What if it just happens once in a while? Can I still call it a law? No, because there's variation. What makes a law if there's no variation? Every time I drop this thing, it's going to fall. That's a law of gravity. Now, they have made a rule that in Bible prophecy, a day always equals a year. So the half an hour, they translate a day for a year, they come up with 7 days. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about, now let's address the half an hour issue so you can understand it better. So is this half an hour literal 30 days, 30 minutes, or is a day for a year, which would be approximately 7 days? And how do we know which is correct? Which interpretation is correct? How do I know, how do you know that my way is better than the other one? Who am I? Who are they? You know, if you speak with your own authority, you're nothing. So how do I know that my interpretation is the correct one? Well, in order to answer that, we need to understand rule number 4. Apocalyptic rule number 4. This one is a little bit more complicated, so I will not have time to explain to you today. But apocalyptic rule number 4 says, a day can sometimes be interpreted as literal year and sometimes literal 24 hours. It depends on the absence or presence of the Jubilee calendar. For reasons that go beyond the scope of this study, the Jubilee calendar was terminated in 1994, spring of 1994. Any prophecies that occurred before 1994, we understand that a day for a year. Just like the 2300 days prophecies, a day for a year, the 70 weeks, 490 years. That's a day for a year. Anything that happened from 1994 up to this point is literal time, which is therefore the half an hour is literal, which is exactly why the millennium, sister, is literal 1,000 years and not 365,000 years. You know, I once asked the pastor was trying to convince me that a day always equals a year. I said, you're trying to tell me something that you yourself don't even believe in. This is he's getting his doctorate. Very intelligent man. So, and I said, you're trying to tell me something that you don't even believe yourself. And then he says, no, I do. I said, well, let me answer me then. I said, is the millennium literal 1,000 years? Or is it 365,000 years? He says, that's a literal 1,000 years. And I said, and what gives you permission to translate everything a day for a year, and the millennium you're saying is literal time? I said, what, Pastor, what governs your interpretation? What governs the switch that you just made? What is your authority for switching? Can you show me in the Bible? Then he says, oh my, I never thought about that. I have a lot to ponder upon. I say, you sure do. Because he doesn't have a rule that he has no idea what a Jubilee calendar is. And most people have never even heard of a Jubilee calendar. So they're interpreting these things just whatever they think. Yeah, this is literal, and well, then I switch the millennium. Well, then if you're going to be consistent, then there's 365,000 years. Oh no, that's literal time.
But you have to accept the 1994.
You don't have to accept 1994, but you have to know a thing or two about the Jubilee calendar.
Well, when it ends.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not expecting anyone to accept it unless they investigate it for themselves and try to understand you know, what God did and how God set up the Jubilee calendar. And most people think it ended at the cross, and they have no idea, because if it did, then the 70 weeks was only 69 weeks and a half. The 70 weeks of Daniel never took place, because it ended on Wednesday.
It ends before the fourth seal.
Correct. Yes, it ended before the fourth seal. Yes, because all the prophecies that we understand in the book of Revelation that has to do with end times, Daniel 12, the 3 time periods, are all literal time. This is why even Seventh-day Adventists have never been able to put those things together, never be able to understand Daniel 12. And this is why now very renowned SDA preachers, because of the little work that we're doing here, and they heard it, they are actually teaching that in literal time. Praise the Lord. I can tell you more about it once we shut the camera off.
Also, the Bible talks about a day with the Lord is of 1,000 years, or 1,000 years.
That's right. That's right.
So, to me, in my study, half an hour is just a short time.
That's right.
And we're just trying to connect it with, you know, when it was revealed to John, it's a short time, is the meaning. It just gives you the half an hour so that you can make the connection that that's a short time.
And you're right, because the Bible doesn't say half an hour, it says about half an hour.
About the space of
Right.
half an hour.
So you're right.
It's just that you can connect that this is a short time.
That's right. Yeah, who knows if it's 29 and a half?
Yeah, it could be.
Right.
What's the reason for a half an hour?
All right. That's my next point, Hal. You're right on the dot. Both of you. Because I'm headed there and we're concluding. Let me see something here real quick. Whoops. Now, okay, so what does this literal 30 minutes silence in heaven mean then, since the book of life is open on earth? What does it mean? It says in heaven. If everybody is on earth here and they're opening the book.
Isn't that when we get to see why we were judged the way we were judged?
That's right. Well, let's look into it right now. That's exactly right. So that's a good question. Now, keep in mind that the book of life is open before the wicked people, before every single person that ever had life, because they're alive for that momentous moment, for that little moment in time. Now, understand something about this half an hour silence in heaven. The word for heaven in Revelation 8:1 in the Greek is orenos, which is more often translated as heaven or sky where birds fly. There's a few words translated heaven. You know, there's heaven where the birds fly. There's heaven where Musarima, where it means heaven where the sun and the moon stars are. And there's heaven, the abode of God. So there's different words, okay? Now, the word that Revelation 8:1 means is orenos, as I said. It means there's silence in the sky where birds fly for half an hour. It is not where God lives, where their stars are hanging. Okay, you can look that up on the concordance and you see several examples of that being used for where the birds fly. So, once the 1,000 years are over, right after the resurrection of the wicked, the seventh seal is broken, remember? Right after the seventh seal is broken, the resurrection of the wicked, everybody's alive. And this will be the only moment in history of the universe when everyone who had life will be alive at the same time. Billions of people and angels will be present. The wicked will be outside of the holy city where Lucifer and his angels are. The saints will be positioned inside the holy city with the angels of God. And at this point in time, Jesus has something to say to everyone, literally everyone who has ever lived. When Jesus breaks the seventh seal, He will show angels and humans alike that He is an eternal God, a member of the eternal Trinity, having every attributes of God. How many billions of people that died without knowing this? So the seventh seal, the deity of Jesus is revealed to every atheist, to every Buddhist, to every Hindu, to every single person that ever lived and died that did not know before. Now, Jesus will show everyone that He was responsible for the creation of everyone present, and it was not some Big Bang theory or some other ways that man came to be crawling out of the ocean with some form of a fish or whatever, that nonsense. And that He was not willing that anyone should perish. He will explain to the watching universe that He was willing to die, and in fact He did die, and He would be willing to die for angels or human before He created them. And at that point, the love of Jesus for His creation will be clearly revealed to every living being in the universe. The content of the book of life written before the foundation of the world will prove to be identical to the contents found recorded in the books of record. When this happens, the universe will know that God has perfect foreknowledge, but He does not use His foreknowledge to manipulate the choices and affections of His children, Sister Cynthia. He does not use. God treats and respects His children on the basis of infinite love. So everyone that has ever lived will know that God is love, even though He foreknew the rise of sin and the price He would have to pay for redemption. He created children and gave them freedom anyhow. Anyways, He did. I mean, that's huge. This touching and compelling story will mark the end of revelation of Jesus as prophesied in the scriptures. That's why the book is called the Revelation. And that's the end of it. He is fully revealed to everyone that ever lived. And this also marks the beginning of eternity with Jesus. Amen? Now at that point, the character of God, of Jesus, is fully vindicated and exonerated. So this impressive scene will take place in a period of about half an hour. Perhaps he's going to show everybody's life in retrospect, and he's going to use the sky where the birds fly perhaps as some kind of screen to show everybody's life, clips of their lives and how they rejected God and the moving of the Holy Spirit. And this is why there's silence for a short period of time, because everyone will be watching and understanding the contents of the book of records, which they did, compared to the contents of the book of life, which God foreknew and wrote before the foundation of the world. Wow. This is heavy stuff, isn't it? So, the wicked will see that the only reason why they're outside is because of their choices. Everyone will see the creation, the fall, and the redemption, and the restoration. Everyone will know that Jesus truly loved His children and that He was willing to die. Perhaps Jesus will show them the cross and all the sacrifice He had to do for them. From the beginning, everyone that sinned, He was willing to die from the beginning, because He was determined that He would die from the beginning. For anyone that sinned without defiance. Amen? See, my prayer is that you and I and all of our family members will be present at that scene. We have no choice, but we will be present. That's something that we have no choice. The question is, where will you be standing? Will you be outside the city, or you will be watching from inside the city? The weather is a lot cooler inside the city than is outside. Because there's still a hellfire burning outside. A lake of fire that burns throughout the whole millennium.
So I've got 30 minutes to figure out where people I might be interested in are.
What do you mean?
In other words, wherever I am, in or out. And I want to know where Carol is. How can I scroll up that fast to find it?
Well,
That's what we do in the millennium.
it is...
Is that during the 1,000 years?
Correct. Yeah, during the 1,000 years, the Bible says that the saints will be given power to judge, even angels.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be understanding everything at that point.
Okay.
But what I find very fascinating is the fact that God brought out the name of the people, of the wicked, that He knew would not choose salvation. But the records are still there. Now, one reason that would help the wicked is that you're going to see exactly their life's record over there, and when you see your own actions, you know what you did. You say, okay, somebody here, if I say here, someone here played in the Mormon temple, piano at the Mormon temple. You're like, I don't even know how to play piano. Who did that? Well, there's only one person here, and the person that did it knows who he was, because that's something he did, and that was Alex. He played an organ, a beautiful organ at a big temple one day. He was invited to play for a little bit there. He's a professional organist. So, whenever a wicked person sees his life, the records, he's going to know, oh yeah, that's me. There's no question. There's no problem that the name is blotted out. I know it. Now, I don't know, maybe this is in speculation, but perhaps someone next to me, my mom or somebody, they may not see my record because my name is blotted out. Only I know. So in my mind, Jesus is even sparing them a further embarrassment in front of someone that may be right next to them too. Because only they will know it. There's no name written of the record. But of course, we can prove that from the Bible. All right, well, we come to our end. And any questions, comments?
I did a little bit of, when I studied the books
Yes.
years ago, there was a book of death. I went back, I saw it in Great Controversy. I didn't have time to go revisit all the writings. It's in some other writings of G. White as well. But
Did you find that in the Bible too, or no?
like I said, the reference text, I didn't get
Okay.
that far, but
Yes.
at the second coming of Jesus Christ, the second death is automatically revealed because there are people who are not going to come out of the grave. So then
Correct.
you could safely say, okay, they have died the second death. And for intelligent beings, it doesn't take really much of a record checking,
Yes.
speaking of the angels, because they're not there.
Correct.
They did not come out of the
They will die the second death
So that
after
is
the millennium
known.
death. Yes.
That is known
True.
to them that they're in the grave, that
They didn't make
they
it.
have just, well, not just died, but their death was the second death.
Correct. Or
They are destroyed.
I understand what you're saying. Yes. I mean, the second death, they will die after they're resurrected again, but they will eventually die the second
Yeah,
death.
but
That's right.
when the righteous comes up at the
Yes.
second coming, that determines also the second death people.
That's right. That's right.
So that's
true.
already known. That,
Yeah.
to them,
Yeah,
they know
we-
because we all have a guardian angel,
Uh-huh.
and they are intelligent.
Yes.
And if I didn't collect that person, it doesn't take me going to look at the record. That person's not there.
That's right.
They have died the second death.
Yes.
So that is revealed. So
Yes.
I have to go back and look. I thank you. For
Yeah.
this
Try to find that in the
study.
Bible. Yes.
And go back and look because
Yes.
the book of death is definitely. I did a search
Uh-huh.
engine of all her writings, and the book of death came up in several.
Have a good night. Yes. Look in the Bible, then find it, and let's see
You
if
have
we
to
can
look at
find
the
it. Yes.
reference text
Yes.
for that, but
Yes. Well, thank you so much. All right. Well, we can pray and then and dismiss, and then if we have any comments or questions, we can stay. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this study. It's amazing how profound and how beautiful the Bible is, and it is amazing how understanding these valid rules help us to put everything in its right place. Please, Lord, help us to ponder upon the things that we heard here today, and put them in our minds, and go to the Bible once again and study them for ourselves. And please bless us, Lord, and guide us into all truth, and help us to have a love for truth, and not a love for religion, for defending truth, but just searching truth. Let that be our desire. Give us a good night and dismiss us safely. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.